Welcome back to the #1 podcast in the world. We're your hosts, Chase DeMoor.
And Gabrielle Moses.
And today I'm joined with a very special guest, so I'm going to let him go ahead and introduce himself.
Ryan Kavanaugh?
Right.
There you go. I'm out.
He's like a nice guy. The most humble guy in the world. But this guy is literally the definition of a guy that wears many, many hats.
Does a little bit of everything.
Does everything. You know, he's from LA to, if he's in Utah to Colorado. Really awesome, genuine guy. But, I want to kind of come in here and pick his brain a little bit. Ryan, I just want to start this by saying, what is it that you specifically do in LA for work?
Oh, man. First and foremost, I'm a dad. That's my first
Aww,
job.
look at that.
Sentimental moments, guys.
No, once you have kids, for me, it all changes. That's job one. I have 8-year-old, 3-year-old, taking care of them. But I do a little bit of everything. So film was kind of, I'll say, after I cut my teeth in finance, but then film. And then I kind of left film and went into tech, biotech, pharmaceutical, aviation. And then
what else?
I have a dog food company. What else? I do a lot of media, and then I'm back into making movies now again. So
that is so many different things. That's crazy. What's been your favorite of all of those, though?
I love, actually, they're all kind of, it's like saying, who's your favorite child? It's I know the one. Yeah, exactly. I know the ones I don't like, actually, but the one, they all have their own exciting moments, and that's part of why I like to do so many different things. Is I really get to experience so many elements of the world doing it. So people in tech are very different than people in film, are very different than people in dog food or social. I'm in social media as well, and biotech is a whole other field. A lot of very, very, very smart people.
What did you do in biotech?
So I do a lot right now in biotech. So the first big biotech was, I don't want to call it, maybe I wasn't so much a founder, but early on involved in a company called Calhoun that's now called CyteRx. And it's basically a polymer they put into a lens. So when you do a cataract surgery, people don't need glasses. And it's went public. It's like a $2 billion public company now. That was my first kind of biotech. It was my dad and I together. And then I was his seed investor in a company, started to say CyteRx, which was originally called Calhoun. ZetaRx was he founded, and I was his seed investor in 2010, later renamed Juno. That was the largest, it's a cancer cure, and has about a 94% full remission rate.
That's amazing.
What do you think about those computer chips that you can stick in your brain now?
You're talking about for cancer? They don't have. You're just talking in general.
No, in general, they just made the skull implant. Yeah, it's biotech. Yeah.
What are you reading?
That's not available yet.
Wait, isn't it Elon Musk?
Yeah, Elon patented it. Elon's one of the people working on it. The monkeys that they put it in apparently went mad, and they had to put them down, although not because of the chip.
For other reasons. It was not the technology.
I don't think it's yet in people's brains. Although sometimes when I listen to Elon talk, I do think okay, he's got the chip because he's just got way too much information.
Sometimes he talks to you. When he's talking, I like Elon, don't get me wrong, but sometimes he talks and he'll be like this, and he'll just say a bunch of really random facts.
Yeah, and you're like, that guy's genius. Oh, he's got the chip. He's just connected to the internet.
Oh, that's right.
Exactly. See, I need that because I have some blonde moments sometimes.
Oh, I'm not even blonde, and I do too.
Oh, the red hair is a whole nother thing. And then, how did you get started in dog food? It seems like such a off-term.
So when I was in 2010, my first wife, who was a ballerina, our big charity thing was that about 5 million dogs are euthanized a year in the United States. And the biggest reason they're euthanized is because pounds and shelters can't afford to feed them. So we would drive around to shelters and pounds and I'm a professional helicopter pilot. So we'd hop in my helicopter, we'd load up just shit tons of food and drive to pounds that needed it. And my business manager called me and he was like, listen, you can't write off $500,000 a year of dog food. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, no one's going to believe it. I was like, but it's true. He's like, you just can't do it. So I was like, I got to find a better way. And at the time, Tom's shoes had just come out, the 1-for-1. So,
yes, I remember those. Those were so big at my school.
They're still pretty big.
Yeah, they're still big.
And so, I'm close friends with Snoop and Michael Bublé, and they're both big into dog rescues too. So I went to them like, I'm going to start this dog food company that's a 1-for-1, where with every bag we sell, we give a bag to a shelter. And so I'm going to take what would normally be the marketing budget and put it into giving that bag away. So I need you guys to come in and help promote. So and Chelsea Handler was our partner up front too. And so we launched it. It's called Dog for Dog, and it's kind of been going ever since. We've donated, I think, 8 million pounds of food.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
Lovely humanitarian work right there. We love to see it.
Try to spend a lot of time on charity. I try to spend half my time on charity.
Okay.
That's good.
And then most recently, you and I, we went to BKFC. You're pretty involved in that scene now. You got your boy Bryce over there fighting on some of those guys. He's trying to convince me to get in there.
No, you guys are wild for that. Bare knuckle.
My skin.
But yeah, it's now, so I did the Tyson Jones fight, which I kind of envisioned and produced, and that was the highest grossing digital pay-per-view in history. And then the 6th highest grossing pay-per-view in all of history. And that was my first big live event, pay-per-view event. I'd done a lot of some Broadway and obviously a lot of movies and TV, but that was my first foray. That was 2019. And then Jake Paul, we put on as the undercard as a favor to someone.
Yeah, literally. Really?
And then everybody, it's just funny when you see the world, everybody was going off on me. Basically, how can you put Jake up against a professional athlete? Nate, he's going to get killed.
Right. You're well, views.
And then, no, but then Jake he ran into Jake's fist. I don't know if you remember, Jake knocked him flat out, and it became this viral moment. And then everybody's going, how could you put Jake against Nate when Nate's not a boxer? I'm like, oh my God, you guys decide which one you're mad at me for. And so then I did the Jake Paul fight after that. And that was Jake Ben Askren, and that kind of broke a bunch of records. And then as I did another raid 25, and in the process, I went to something called BKFC 1. Very first BKFC, and it's bare knuckle, full on and the one thing I couldn't get over is the sound. And I'm like, this is distinguishing from anything else. And this has the ability to be the UFC. So I literally went and met with the owner that night, and then I spent a year negotiating to buy it. And we ended up buying it. And then, Bryce fought against a 3-0 bare knuckle fighter, the Cutman, and he knocked him out. And you came and saw it, and I did try to get you to go in and fight. I was like, "Come on, go in,
Chase, get in the ring."
Those heavyweights right now. I fought the bare knuckle heavyweight champ already. That guy can hit hard. I can only imagine what it would be like without the boxing gloves on. So, in your defense, I did hear the sound of, and it's hard to project that sound on camera because until you hear the sound of splitting skin. And I'm pretty sure at one of those points when he got punched, he lost his mouth guard or his tooth. Or
something. It flew out.
And I looked at you and I was like, oh yeah, don't even look at me. All I got in life is a pretty smile. That's it, man.
You're like, I can't lose that.
Oh my God, oh man. And then, so you do a lot of the BKF. That's super cool. I see you a lot on the fight community and Twitter Spaces back previously, earlier in the year in the summertime and stuff like that. You were hopping in there, listening, giving your takes.
Just trying to I always like to hear what's going on in the flow, especially since we were doing a lot of not a lot, but involved in kind of trying to, our whole thing was how do we bring the younger audience into boxing? So when I did the Tyson fight, about 70% of boxing pay-per-views came from traditional media, like cable, our parents would watch TV, right?
Yeah.
And so when we did it, we put it on Fight TV and on all cable, and we ended up getting about 40% digital, which is unheard of. And then we bought Fight TV, and on Jake's fight, it was 80% digital. So the whole idea was if it's digital, we've obviously transitioned a younger audience into boxing. So we that's our focus right now, is how do we kind of keep it cool and relevant, because it was definitely getting to be an older kind of, your dad or grandfather sport.
Yeah. So you're for the influencer boxing space. You're for it.
I mean, to an extent, and I mean, obviously, I know your fights are great, and but I do think it gets a bit much when when they're everybody and their mother who's not athletic just hops in and they're let's do 10 fights.
It's dangerous.
It's dangerous. So even when we did it, Jake, for what everybody wants to say, even in the beginning ones, he trained really hard. He was in shape. He might not be the best boxer, but he's not going to get killed. And Bryce, same thing, right? He might not be the best, but he's trains really hard. He's got good form. He's got good technique. Same with you. You're an athlete. You're in good shape. You've got good technique. You might win. But I think when they, I don't necessarily agree with these where they go do 10 influencers and piracy is a big issue, and that audience doesn't love to pay. And then number two, it's like, I kind of think a lot of people do it just for boxing's sake. It's like, let's just throw a big name in there because it'll get eyeballs, but not because it's going to be a good boxing match.
That's going to be terrible.
You know, and that's where I kind of draw the line. So like, even at BKFC, the only social fight we've done is Bryce versus a real bare knuckle boxing 3-0, and it was a real fight, and you know, it had real repercussions.
Yeah, I always think the same when you talk about, like, I think it's two different sports, like influencer fighting and real fighting, because like obviously you guys did in BKFC and that turned out how it did, and Bryce is like a big superstar stud right now. But like boxing is a thing where it's like, I think, like you were saying earlier, like our grandparents and our parents, they watch boxing on TV. Nowadays, younger generations, like, how do you entice them to watch boxing? And then the second hardest part about that is how do you entice them to pay to watch boxing?
Yep.
You know, so I think that the good fights are good, like the Tanks, the Ryan Garcias, like that's all great to watch, like real boxing. And then there's the influencer space where if you have a couple big names, like, you know, the Jake Pauls, the Logans, the Dylan Dennis and stuff like that, it draws that younger audience. Okay, well, if you like this, then you'll really like this, you know what I mean? And so like I've always been obviously I'm biased, but I've had a good influence.
How do you deal with all the piracy? Because kids our age or younger will live stream it. I've seen it on TikTok streams, like different apps and whatnot.
DraftKings is bringing you only the best. Classics like slots, roulette, and poker. Me personally, I've always been a roulette guy.
And we like to have a lot of fun, so if you go and download the DraftKings Casino app and use code Unscripted, you can actually get an instant match for whatever you're playing, up to $100. All you have to do is bet $5 to get that.
So you mean to tell me that if I bet $5, they're going to bet $5?
Yeah, they'll match it.
If I bet $100, they're going to bet me $100?
Yeah, they will match it if you use code Unscripted whenever you download the app.
Easily done. I'm going to go use Unscripted right now.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. 21 plus, physically present in Connecticut, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, West Virginia only. Void in Ontario. 1 per opted-in new customer. Minimum $5 deposit. Maximum match of $500 in casino credits, which requires a one-time playthrough within 7 days. See terms at casino.draftkings.com/playerschoice for eligibility, terms, and responsible gambling resources.
So it's interesting
so much
you say
money
that
you're
because
losing.
it's led to my next venture. But like I think I told you guys I have this podcast called Failure. It was a failure in that, a big failure in that led me to like this revelation that now I'm launching that will end piracy on pay-per-view. But it started where it was, so the Tyson fight, I think probably would have set all records had we not had piracy. We sold 1.6 million pay-per-views. The Jake Paul fight sold a lot, but we saw, I think, we counted down 10 million paid streams that someone was charging like $1 to $2 or more, like more, but minimum $1 for streams. And so the thing about it happened is Triller, which owns Fight Club, decided to do what the UFC had done and basically say, we're going to go sue people who, you know, not people who pirated, but people who, you know, offered it pirated and made money off of it. But we gave people a hiatus. We're like, listen, we're going to bring actions, but if you pay the fee, even if you just pay the $59 or 49, sorry, and we won't go after you. And so we sued, I don't know, 8 people. We won against like 5. And one of the guys, I'd never heard his name before. His name was Ethan Klein. And this fucking guy.
Let me
tell you.
I didn't even know who it was. He decides that somehow Triller is me, even though it's a big company that's going public and worth billions of dollars.
But you were big in Triller, though.
Yeah, I was a co-founder, but but I wasn't like out there publicly personally suing him. But he tells his 7 million followers, Ryan Kavanaugh suing me, and he makes up all kinds of shit. I mean, the worst shit you can do, you can make up. I joke around that, so he manipulated my Wikipedia, and I joke around that like, I'm like, if you read it, Ted Bundy meets Bernie Madoff, you know, and thank God I won this. I have a good sense of humor, but I ended up having to sue him because he went and did 55 podcasts on me. People were like, what's his fucking obsession with you?
55 podcasts?
If you go on his Instagram right now, and he's got 7 million followers, makes a lot of money. His website is a website he created. Listed as his site, does Ryan Kavanaugh look like Harvey Weinstein? That's listed as his personal website. And then he just lists all kinds of bullshit that he made up. And then he went and he challenged all of his audience to, said, go on his Wikipedia. We're going to all upvote this. He had started Reddit threads, like, let's destroy his Google. And so I ended up having to sue him for real.
Defamation.
Yeah,
that's the defamation.
And I won. And the thing is, you never win in California, especially as a public figure. And I won. And he went and told his audience that I lost. And he's in the appeal right now, which gets heard in August. And then once he loses, he'll owe me like, probably tens of millions of dollars. But,
Perfect.
But it's funny because I was like dealing with this guy and I was just getting more and more frustrated. At first I was like responding and that just gave him more fuel.
Never respond to anything.
I didn't realize that. I'm usually behind the social media guys. I'm not a social media guy.
Search your name, platform.
So I was like attacking him back going like, this guy's a liar. And then he'd take it and he'd just do another show on it. So I just stopped responding. And I realized I felt bad. I mean, because I would get somewhere between 1,000 and 5,000 death threats on Instagram from his followers. And he had key lines he would use. Like he called me Cav. And so it would be like, hey, Cav, I'm coming to kill you and your family. Or like, he would be like, D's balls. I get these things like, hey, suck D's balls. I get like a picture of balls. But then he started sending it to my ex-wife, who's the mother of my child, saying that we're coming to kill you. So I finally actually started filing complaints. And it turns out, like, I felt bad. 2 kids got kicked out of school because of it. His followers are all like kids in high school, and they just believe what he says. And you
shouldn't feel bad about that. They shouldn't be threatening your family.
Yeah.
No, I know, but it's like, and this guy, he got kicked off a team, but they're young kids, and he has like 6-7 million followers that are kids that just follow him. And so, but it's funny because it led to, and ironically, he's like, I won the piracy case, which he did win the first piracy case. And he said, I didn't pirate anything. And then like 4 months ago, there was a second piracy case that Triller had, and they won against him where the judge found he pirated.
Oh no. What does this guy even post? Like, what's his content?
His entire content, I'd never heard of him before.
Yeah, I don't know who he is.
To attack people, and he picks someone and he attacks them, and he calls his community his foot soldiers. And he says foot soldiers attack. And then they have like Reddits and they have Discords and
that's so toxic.
I don't know how you live that life. But what it led to for me was, it's interesting because I realized that's not going to solve piracy. In fact, the piracy probably made him more money on the podcast he did off me than, he probably made tens of millions of dollars off that. I'm not joking. Right. 55 podcasts on me. Like, and people like, I saw a lot of his followers even like, this is getting old, dude. Like, move on. But so I went and I worked with a partner. We're about to announce that to come up with a way to stop live streaming piracy completely. And it actually works. It's in beta. And it's coming out soon.
Yeah, it's interesting how that would work though.
It works.
Does it?
Is it just AI?
No, it's a file type. So you change the file type completely. So if I'm streaming an event and you're watching it, it's specific to your TV. And if you try and rebroadcast it, whether it's through screen share, Zoom, Apple, any of them, it's a black screen. It will not.
Netflix actually does that, actually.
Netflix does it a little bit, but Netflix, there's ways you can still screen share. Like you can have Netflix on your phone and screen share, right? And then that screen could be rebroadcast anywhere else. This is like, imagine if you tried to show something on Zoom and all you saw was a black screen. And that's the way. And yeah, it's going to be pretty awesome. It will literally change the face of all pay-per-view.
That kind of leads me to my next question too. So like working amongst like all these different things, I know you were speaking about that guy earlier a little bit about like how he's got like this audience and stuff. Have you found that living in LA, have you met like both types of people where it's like, these are really good people, but then these are also not so good people that you probably shouldn't associate with?
Yeah. I mean, look, I started in Hollywood when I was pretty young. I think I was running the studio when I was 25. And so I was arguably called the most powerful person in Hollywood for about 10 years. I think I was doing like 40 movies a year and 20 TV shows. And so during that period of time, I was around the who's who in Hollywood. And I was working with like pretty much every studio. I structured and kind of created Marvel Studios and did Netflix's first big deal. And so I was like in it. And when I look around at the people I had around that I felt like were my friends, in your 20s, you kind of, I mean, you guys are in your 20s. So
yeah, I was gonna say,
but you kind of, you don't know what you don't know. And I'll say it.
You don't know.
Right. And so you kind of think, oh, this person's my friend. And, as I kind of you're always going to face challenges in life. And that's the one thing about success. You will always have ups and downs. And when you have that down, which I had, and I've had big downs and big ups, then you see who's really your friend and who's really not. And it's interesting that some of the people I thought weren't good people turned out to be the best. And some of the people that I expected to be great and be there were not. And so I'd say I've gotten very discerning. I think I have like 7 people I'd call dear friends, and I've got my family. And, you know, that's why I say I'm a father first, because I don't really go out that much. I spend most of my time with my close friends, and, you know, I was
trying to convince you to come to like everything.
You know,
I got vacation in the mountains with the fam. All right, bro.
I literally used to travel 278 days a year in a different country. When I was running the studio, I was just on a plane all the time. You name it, been there, done that.
Yeah.
You know,
I think like that's like the biggest thing like that I personally struggle with. I come into LA because I come from like such a small town. It's like you're friends with some of your friends with somebody, and it's like you come to LA, and I feel like the more notoriety I got, it seemed like I had less friends, because it was like, are you my friend because you like who I am? Are we getting along? Or are you my friend because everybody knows who you know what I mean? Like you run into that a lot. And, you know, obviously like Hollywood is known for like the TV persona entertainment side of it. And so I think in particular with that, is it just like the people that you would consider that could be like negative or some sort of way towards you that they won't be your friend? Or do you find it as like the entire like organization and company can be corrupt in whole?
I think it's both. I mean, I think it would be too simple to say like Hollywood acts as this one instrument and they all do this. But there are factions and there are power players that control factions. And here's I think, so there's 3 things when I think about Hollywood. So one is most people in Hollywood aren't educated. So
I agree.
They're like, whether it's a producer, I mean, a lot of directors do come from our background, so that's a little different, but producers, actors, you know, which so I have a lot of actors that are best friends that are educated, but actors, even studio heads or people in the studios. And so what happens is a lot of them don't necessarily feel inside like they deserve it, because they're like, they came from a humble place. They didn't necessarily have the education. And then they're also competing. And when I say competing, it's a little different now because of Netflix and Prime and others, which not necessarily for the better, but it used to be everything was theatrical, right? So if you think about theatrical, there's 52 weekends in a year, of which call those 7 are just dead weekends. You don't want to put movies out. So you got 40 something weekends. You take out Christmas and July and August, which are like saved for the Avatars and the giant $200 million movies. So now you've basically got left about 30 weekends. And if you got 30 weekends left and there's 2 movies out or 3, you never really have more than 3 big ones at a time. That means you got about 100 jobs a year in all of Hollywood. 100 producing jobs, 100 directing jobs, 100 writing jobs, you know, however many big actors there are in a movie. So 400 or 500 acting jobs. And then you go, okay, and of those, how many are the same? Well, the same producer probably makes 3 or 4 movies. The same director probably makes 2. The same actors in 4 or 5. So you cut it down and you're like, oh, there's like 40 jobs this entire year for that one person. So if I'm doing 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 movies, as much as people are like, oh, I'm your friend, I'm turning around and they're like, fuck him, right? Because they feel like I'm taking something. And that's for all of Hollywood, I think. And it becomes just a very, it's not a real place. So like someone will sit and be like, oh dude, I love you. What you're doing is amazing. And but the second you turn around, they're talking shit, you know? And it's a combination of all those things. And it is a combination of like, I don't think they're anybody's friend. They're just like, you can do something for me right now. Therefore I'm going to pretend like, you know, I like you. And I don't even think they know if they like anyone.
Right. Yeah. That's tough too, because I don't know. Like, I think that I've always been more the type where I see like if you want to be like what's the word? Like my dad, when I was a kid, used to tell me like you typically are a combination of the 5 most people that you hang out with. So it's like you never want to be like the most what's the word? Like if you feel like you're the smartest guy in the room, you should probably leave the room.
It's true. By the way, the smartest guy in the room is the one who talks the least.
No, that's true.
That is the most true statement, I think. And I think like the thing that I look at Hollywood with is like I always like from outside the acting aspect, just talking like social media entertainment, I always think there's like people that have accumulated mass followings and they're up there and they're all fine and everybody amongst those people kind of get along. And then there's the people like way at the bottom that don't really do social media. They just idolize those people at the top. And then there's this gray middle area. And I always say like that middle area is like the worst you can be in, because in that area, and you could be best friends, but if they feel like they can get up there, they're going to stab, they're going to pull, they're going to claw you all the way to get up there. They're going to, satire you under your name and stuff like that. And so I can see how like that can transition into like working inside film industry in particular.
Yep.
I know like recently, like you're working on the movie with Bryce and all of them.
Just finished that. Yeah. Started 2 more and just finished that one.
Bro, that's so
exciting.
Awesome. My question for that is like, do you feel like that is hard to because like with that one, that was a particular movie because you casted one influencer and the rest of the people are actors pretending to be influencers.
That's kind of my new film model. When I went back into film, like I literally was like burnt out. I was like, I gotta leave the industry for a bit, and I did. And then kind of as I, got into the influencer world, I saw this opportunity where it really was both a business and a creative change. It was, okay, I'm going to make movies that appeal to, I'll call it top 10 influencers audiences, which is a young, middle 20 and teen audience, which is horror, American love stories, and American comedies. And I'm going to cast one top 10 influencer and then everybody else actors, right? And so the first one was actually an idea I came up with, which because we created, or we had, they did, but Hype House and Sway, that was Triller's houses. So we still had the actual Sway house and that, Josh and Bryce and everybody grew up in. So I had this idea of like, okay, nobody's done this yet. Let's have the top 10 theoretical influencers get kidnapped. And they wake up and they're like stuck in this house, i.e. Sway House, which is like a 50,000 square foot house, right?
And people know the Sway House.
And they know the Sway House. And nothing's changed. So like, it's the Sway House. And they don't know why they're there, but they're stuck. And they realize there's a round every couple hours. And at the end of each round, the world's voting. And the person who has the least votes dies in a brutal way. So I went to the guy who wrote the last 2 Saws and I pitched it to him. He's like, I'm in. And then he directed it, and and that's the movie. And it's great because it's 50 Cent partner was he's in it and he's my producing partner. Bryce obviously is one of the stars, and then we've got a great cast. We've got Neil McDonough, and we've got Paige Van Zant's in it, and it's a very diverse cast.
And is it you that do you pick the cast for it, or is it like they go through like auditions and then they get passed up to you? Like, is there like a hierarchy?
That movie, it all depends on the movie because directors and producers play different roles at different times. In that movie, because it was my baby, because it was my original idea. So yeah, there was huge casting calls, and then the casting directors kind of weed out, and then it kind of comes up, and then I'll look at it with the director and the other producers, and we'll look at, 10 people and decide on one. But the main lead, so like Neil McDonough, he's a dear friend, so he was one of the leads, and then obviously Bryce, we kind of made it around because his character, he plays somewhat himself.
Yeah. Perfect.
That has to be different.
Yeah, it was, his name is Carter in the movie, but he plays himself. And then we have Hannah Stocky, in which we did get through casting. Interesting, because I didn't have a relationship with her.
Yeah. I was like, I know her from Vine. Yes. Didn't she do Vine?
She's got like a huge YouTube following. Huge. And I'm actually doing one of my next movies is with her boyfriend, with King Botch.
Yeah, King Botch. Yeah. One of our good buddies.
Yeah. So I have 2 movies with him, actually. And then, the rest came through some form of or 50, obviously, was a pre-existing relationship. And then the rest came through casting.
What's the time frame from like start to finish? It has to be a few years, right?
Before you answer the question on the time frame, I want everyone know, like, what's a budget look like on a movie?
Oh, that too.
Because I have a friend that is trying to pitch a script, and I was asking him, I was like, okay, so what is the movie going to cost? Like a couple $100K? No, it's about $4 million, and that's a cheap movie. And I'm like, there's no way. $4 million.
$4 million's a cheap movie.
No.
So
aren't they usually like 10 to 20?
Well, 10 to 20 is no man's land. And so 10 to 20, you don't want to make movies in that price because it's like you want to be over 20 or under 7 or 8. So think about it this way. So you're shooting on average, call it 25 to 30 days. If you've got a crew of 200 people and they're all professionals, right? whether they're a cameraman, a DP, a lighting expert, a sound expert, right? Add up what that costs, right? And that's before insurance, location, then add on the cost of your main actors, then on your director, which is not cheap, your producer, the writing, then
Wait, I lost count.
Yeah, I was on the number.
Then not to mention wardrobe, not to mention any kind of prop. So everything in the house, every scene needs a prop setup. Then you need people to do continuity. You need an AD. You need a DP.
How much is just insurance?
On some movies, it could be millions. So you need. I haven't been involved in a movie that there wasn't a lawsuit of some sort. No, I don't think anybody has.
Is there a lot of lawsuits in these movies?
Always. So
for what?
It's everything from someone like, oh, I once met that guy and pitched that idea to him in an elevator and he stole it from me.
Oh, kiss my ass.
I'm not joking. And like the insurance companies would rather settle and pay them like $30K half the time than like fight
So
it.
you can make that up and be like, hey, that was my idea.
I'm going straight to Marvel and I invented the character of Thanos. So you guys like...
If you look how many times Marvel has been sued for that, like you'd be shocked. Like
that's insane.
Yeah. So so insurance is a lot. It's called E&O insurance. And sometimes oftentimes it pays off because I can't tell you how many times we'll have an outday shoot and it'll be raining. Well, you use insurance because that could cost $1 million one day of loss, right? And we had one. I made this movie 310 to Yuma, and a horse died in the middle of the scene. It was really bad. Yeah. And
Peter's coming to see you guys.
It's just whole thing is like set aside how sad it is the horse died, but then you got like all this crazy shit. You got to shut down shooting. It's just so yeah. And then if you have big actors who are making 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 million, and if you have a big director who's making 3, 4, 5 million, and big producers who are making millions, right? And then by the way, we just finished shooting. We haven't even started editing yet. Now I got to pay for the editor, the editing equipment, the effects, and then by the way, music.
How many people do you think, given obviously it depends on the size of the movie, special effect? Oh, because then you got to tie in special effects. If you have special effects, so I forgot about that. How many people do you think it takes to edit a movie?
A big movie, you could see 100+ people editing.
So you need an army to put on a movie.
Oh no, it's the way I explain a movie is every movie is a company. And it actually is because you form a company for the movie, but it literally is a company. You have a couple hundred or more people working on every movie, even the small ones.
And so to make a price point, like I remember I was talking to you about this last summer. To make a price point, it's the opening weekend or the opening 2 weekends gross income that dictates how much the money makes.
So the opening weekend is very important. That kind of dictates. You can generally run a formula based on the opening weekend as to all the other windows. Now, with some exception, because so if the movie is good, and it's hard to know what good is. I'm not saying like you oftentimes think it's bad and it's good, or think it's good and it's bad. But good as in it's getting the right reviews. And I don't mean reviews like a movie reviewer wrote it, but right word of mouth, right social media. Then you hold strong for week 2 and week 3. And then you're kind of what we'll call gross for the weekend, for the couple weekends, dictates every other part of the window. If it's bad, you could have a really good opening weekend and then you'll just drop off. Like the word of mouth, no matter how much marketing you do. Oh, by the way, we haven't even talked about how much you spend on marketing.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah, that's a whole nother ballgame.
Which is generally the same as the budget of the movie. So double it. Yeah.
It's the same?
Depending on the budget, yeah. So a $50 million movie, you're spending at least 50 marketing. A $100 million movie, you're spending at least 100 marketing.
How much do you think Barbie spent on marketing? Because that was everywhere.
A couple hundred, about 300 million. And they thought it was going to fail, by the way. The weekend before, they were like basically getting ready to lay off people. They thought it was going to fail.
Really?
Yeah.
Seriously?
They didn't like the edit on the movie?
They just thought it was going to... It's not that they don't like it. So here's the thing. What we do with movies when we finish, and when you make a movie, you get so close to it, right? And you're stuck in it. But what you do is you go recruit test audiences. And it's the only way you really know is like you have people stand on places that are symbolic of like the diversity of America. And you like, hey, would you like to come see a free movie Saturday? And then they show up and you show them the movie and they fill out some forms. They're like, did you like it? Would you recommend it? What didn't you like? And then these companies create statistics around it and they tell you, hey, that compared to these movies, that one's going to do this number. And it's called test screening. And so they were like, Warner Brothers, who distributed it, was like, this thing is
They picked the wrong
going to be
people
completely
to do
crap, and we're going to lose all our money and then some. And they were just like, this is going to be the biggest disaster we've had because they spent a lot of money on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out to be, you know,
the biggest movie of the year.
Yeah, like one of the biggest movies of everybody's year.
That's insane. And does timing of when you release these movies matter?
Yes and no. So there's good weekends and there's bad weekends, and you look at like, what are you competing with? You don't want to compete with the Super Bowl, for example. Like, right. You know, you don't want to compete. Like, as much as Halloween weekend's good, it's not really that good, because if Halloween falls on a Saturday or Friday, they're trick-or-treating, not going to the movies, right? But someone a long time ago, who's actually the chairman of Lionsgate, is a dear friend of mine, John Feldheimer. I did my first 9 movies with it. And he taught me something on that same way I was talking about 310 Yuma, where it was a $55 million movie. I'd made it, they were distributing it, and I'd financed it. And it was a Western. And September 9th, which is the first weekend of September, is traditionally the single worst weekend of the year. And for movies, because it's back to school. It's like people, they've already seen the big movies in August. All the, you know, they've gotten their movie kind of out of them, right? Yeah. And they're kind of waiting for school to be in a little bit and talk about things. He said to me, listen, I think we have a good enough movie. No one is on that weekend. Let's go on that weekend. Everybody thought we were nuts. Like, everyone. And I think we opened to like 10 million, which is a terrible opening. And we ended up building on that because the movie was so good that we ended up in one of the highest grossing Westerns of all time. So
gross is actually better than opening then.
Well, if you would do 10 million, you would normally say, I'm going to have an under $30 million total gross. Because you would, 3X is a huge multiple to your opening weekend. But once in a while, if you have a good enough movie, you break those molds. Very few in between.
So how do you get financed for like a $30-40 million movie? Where does that even come from?
So, I mean, okay, again, there's 5 studios, and they generally are doing 95% of the movies. Then Netflix came into being, and obviously now Amazon and Hulu, and they're really financing. The reason movies are so shitty is Netflix just sits there and says, yes. Oh, you've got The Rock. Oh, you've got Ryan Reynolds. Oh, you've got Mark Wahlberg. Like, and I know who you are. Cool. Here's $50 million. Go. And you're like, oh, I got just watched that same movie 50 times this week, and nothing original ever gets made. Because you got to remember, when I did the deal with Netflix in 2010, they were a mail order DVD company.
And the little red envelopes.
And so we were the first ones to go and say, we're going to put movies on demand instead of going on HBO. I mean, there were articles written that said, like, I lost my mind and I went with this shitty. I remember still the chairman of Warner Bros. At the time, who owned HBO, they were like, are you worried that they did this deal with this company, Netflix? And he's like, they're a fly on my ass. That's actually what he called them. And I remember at the Milken conference, I was on a panel with the guy who was the chairman of CBS, Les Moonves, arguing with him and the head of DirecTV. I'm like, you guys are going to get crushed by Netflix. And they're like, oh my God, you don't know what you're talking about. They're like the shittiest little company. But the interesting part was Netflix had come out and said, we're never going to make our own movies. 2010, like, we were their sole at the time provider of movies. And they had one TV show, and they're like, to the guy who was now the CEO had blown $50 million trying to make movies, and it all failed. And he came out and he's like, I'm never going to do that again. And so now you got to remember, you got a tech guy who doesn't come from, well, not even a tech guy. I think he ran DVD stores. I'm not actually joking. Like, back in the 90s when like Blockbuster was around. And he's running Netflix, and, you know, he's not a movie guy. And his thing is kind of like, I'm just going to greenlight everything, and I'm just going to develop everything. And eventually I'll just buy enough followers that they're going to watch my shit. And so then, unfortunately, Amazon has to compete. So then they're like, oh, although Amazon's a little better, like, you know,
Prime Video.
Yeah, they have a good creative crew who actually focuses on quality. Like, they'll spend a lot of money, but they'll spend it on quality. So they bought like A Quiet Place 2 and 3 for $400 million, or Knives Out, you know, for a couple $100 million. Apple TV, very highbrow, right? They're very discerning. They spend a lot of money, but it's like their shows are quality. But unfortunately, like that, so that's where a lot of the money comes from now. And the studios didn't realize they kind of fell into this trap. So for about 5 years, Netflix was funding all the studios' movies, and the studios would put them theatrical and then put them on Netflix. And they didn't realize they were like funding their own doom, right? They were like sending all these users over to Netflix, and eventually Netflix said to the studios, yeah, okay, you guys can fuck off now.
Yeah,
we're going to do it ourselves.
Right. And so then the studios are like, how do we compete, right? So the studios still do make whatever 15 movies a year, so 20 movies a year. So you got the studios. Paramount does a great job. Warner Brothers does a great job. Sony's doing good. Their animation has been great. Fox is Disney. Obviously, Disney's still crushing it.
They're suing car wash in Israel for calling it Star Wash. Like it's like
really?
Yeah, it's like a big thing all over Twitter right now. So like Disney's very
they're very protective of their brand.
We paid $4 billion, whatever they paid for Star Wars. We're not letting anybody.
Yeah, as you know, I get it. I'd be pretty pissed if
I mean, the whole industry, it sounds like it's been changing though since Netflix became as big as it is today, especially with movie premieres and whatnot. Where do you see things going?
Well, I also imagine too, you probably watch movies in a more critical light than like we would watch a movie and we'd be like, this is a great movie. But you probably are more like, the lighting could be better there. They could have said this. I can imagine.
I try to turn it off. Like I try to just enjoy a movie sometimes and enjoy it for what it is. And then I'd say it's really funny when I watch movies with my kids, it's easier because kids movies, it's like a cartoon or a fun, and so I can appreciate like trying to turn that off. But like I just went and saw Ferrari. It didn't do any business. And it's one of my favorite movies of the year. It's so well made. Michael Mann directed. I actually was going to originally make it with him 7 years ago, but Russell Crowe was going to star in it and he was going to do it all in Italian. And then it ended up being what's his name that plays Han Solo's son.
I know who you're talking about. I don't know names.
Yes. And he is such a good actor. You'd have, like, honestly, he deserves an Academy Award. Penelope Cruz deserves an Academy Award. And I sat there and I was just like admiring the lighting and the shots. And
like, this is beautiful.
It is. And it's hard to break from that. I mean, there's this scene where she's, I don't give anything away, but she's, although nobody in the world saw it, so it doesn't really matter. Her son has passed away, Enzo Ferrari, and she goes to his grave to talk to him. It's about a 4-minute scene and she doesn't say a word, but the expressions on her face change and you like feel the entire conversation she's having without any words coming out. And you're like, that's a brilliantly made movie.
My question is like, obviously you watch HBO, I'm sure, but have you ever seen like the Game of Thrones?
Yeah, of course.
How much does it cost to make a mistake like that when they had the Starbucks?
The Starbucks?
Yeah, it's like a famous thing, and they're all playing the blame game.
I think they do part of it on purpose, though.
No, because they played the blame game on Jimmy Kimmel, and the text message came out. It was like, her cup. Like, what's that? Okay, honestly, like, do you think stuff like that happens often? And two, is that a big money mistake?
I actually think that helped them. I think they had to
That's
play dumb,
saying.
and they had to play like, I don't know if they did it on purpose, but they had to obviously play dumb and be like, oh, that's a total fuck up, because it is. It's a continuity fuck up, meaning like it's like watches or shoes. Like sometimes you'll be in a movie and someone forgets to take off their watch, and it's like they're playing 1950s and they're wearing a brand new Apple Watch, but it's less noticeable. When someone catches it like that, think of how many people went back and watched it.
Yeah.
And or how many people that never watched the show were like, oh, I got to go see the Starbucks thing.
Yeah.
Right.
It kind of goes back to how you like fund your own demise. It's like with stuff like that, he's like, you guys pay so much money to make sure that continuity is legit and nothing changes. But then when something does happen, it kind of just pays back into it. But the second thing with that is, do you think Starbucks a lawsuit for that? Because now
Starbucks could have sued, but what are the damages? So here's the thing.
No damage.
We're all very careful, to not wear brands, right? Because you're not supposed to have, water turned front, right? Because we don't have, because they're not a sponsor. Yeah. And you don't want to be sued by the company whose name I'm not going to say.
Yeah, exactly.
But
smart guy.
But the reality is, I was thinking about it, I'm like, what? You're just helping them. So like, what Starbucks going to sue me? Like, you guys got us seen 4 billion times? Like,
yeah. But at the other end of that spectrum, they're like, the only reason your show got viewed so many times by X amount of so many people is because our cup was in there. You can make the argument for both ends too.
It'd be a losing argument.
You think so?
Because why would he put that much money into lawyer fees, into this or that?
Because like, think of it like this. If for example, we run this podcast. If I bring Ryan on the podcast and this podcast does 50 million views, because
I'm calling you for a check.
Exactly. Because he's coming on with a Richard Milley. And I go, okay, yeah. Oh, we can't say that word. And then I go, everybody goes back to the podcast, and now we got 50 more million views because they're trying to see this guy's Richard Milley.
Millet.
Subtle flag.
Millet.
Right? And,
Guys can't even say it.
now Richard Millie's calling me up being like, hey, bro, I'm going to be honest with you, man. You said that our name like 10 times in your podcast. You got Ryan on there rocking our stuff. We want to check because now you just made a check off of him wearing that. I'm like, bro, what?
Well, if that's how the world works,
That's how the world works.
It doesn't
That
look
guy's suing you for having a conversation in an elevator.
It does work that way, except brands have so lawsuits in business, like big business, are just a cost of doing business. So they analyze, like, people who sue are usually like the bottom of the totem pole. I hate to say it, but they're like generally scum. Yeah. And they're like, oh, I'm going to go sue for something stupid and hope they'll settle. Or, you know, it's like a lot of people sue when they lose money in deals. This is a movie or deals. It's like, okay, I'm worth $500 million. I'm going to invest $1 million in something. And then if I lose it, and it's known to be the riskiest thing in the world, I'm going to sue and say, I thought it was like going to make me 5 times my money no matter what. And you're like, dude, you can't, government T-bills at the time or whatever are paying you 8%. And those are like close to guaranteed. And you're telling me as a super sophisticated investor, you think that 500 times is guaranteed and you're suing for that, right? So people who sue are generally in that mind. They're just like, I just want to, they're sleazy. The brands, it's value. So like Disney brought up suing Star Wars, right? That's a decided effort because they're like, we have to protect Star Wars. And if we don't go after this one, others will copy, right? So they know they're not going to make any money off that. They just want to stop it. But,
I see.
Okay. And there's a reason why. Like next thing you know, you'll have like, you know, the Chewbacca burger, you know, like, you know.
Right. Recently they're going through that thing with the whole Mickey Mouse thing because the patent on the original Mickey Mouse is up. Now people are making horror movies based off the original Mickey Mouse. Which I didn't even know was a thing. I thought if you own the rights to something as iconic as Mickey Mouse.
It's 100 years. And by the way, Disney's the one who got it changed. It used to be 30 and they got it changed to 100.
So you can only own something for 100 years?
And even then, it's hard to own for 100 years.
And if the author of like a book or something dies, that's whenever it gets even more messy.
Yeah.
So you mean to tell me 100 years from now, like basically everything on Disney Channel is going to be like anybody can use a lot
less than 100 years because a lot of stuff on Disney channels came out.
Or Marvel even.
You know,
like
the Marvel stuff goes into public domain. And it's specific though. So the way around that, like the only thing that went into public domain was the one character of Mickey in a steamboat. Like it doesn't even look like Mickey,
original,
you know? Yeah. And so people, the way they get around it is they just create a new one that's a little different, put that in, and then make that the popular one, and then copyright it.
But then they could, but it's the same name. Like for example,
Mickey Mouse, they can use that picture and they can call him Mickey. But like if they call him like, you know, the Mickey Mouse, and they just change it a little bit and enough that it looks different, and that's what they put in cartoons, you can't use that now for 100 years from the date they first put that out. So that's how that's why you see characters change a lot.
I never put that together, but that does make sense of why like you would watch like a cartoon, like even like the Wolverine outfit is changed
all the time. And every time they do that,
name to Logan.
Yeah. So the day they started using Logan, that's when the 100 years starts. And they can use, you know, Wolverine before that, but you know,
the Wolverine.
Like now you got me all self-conscious. I'm covering my watch up.
Don't worry, he can't even say the name right.
What is it called?
It's Richard Mille, right?
Yeah, Mille.
What'd I say?
Millie.
Whatever.
That's how they say
Millie,
it.
like Millie Vanilli.
One of these days I'll be dumping champagne on my own Richard Mille. No, that's actually interesting. I didn't know that. So basically, do you think that is one of those situations where it could be beneficial to the brand of Disney because people are gonna be like, where the hell did you get this mouse? Or like,
no, I actually don't. I think there's nothing Disney can do about it. They'll just be watching carefully to make sure no one steps into other Mickey. Like if they take a frame out of another Mickey, you know they'll go after him. But like the Starbucks thing, there's just no reason for them to go after it. It's not like it's going to trigger a bunch of other people doing the same thing, and they're not going to win any money. If they go sue the studio and HBO and say, we're suing you for using that, then they have to prove they were damaged, right? Or that there was ill-gotten gains.
And that's like, you can't even prove defamation. It's so hard.
I did.
You got lucky.
Well, I mean, in your defense, you have like legitimate like text.
55 podcasts.
Yeah, like text. I have podcasts and websites, and no, it's he put games on there even like You can like play games to like shift my face to Harvey Weinstein's.
Yeah.
This guy has too much time, honestly.
He does. I'm like, he's a little bit obsessed, you think?
Yeah.
So for your movie that you have coming out, the social media one, is that comes out early this year?
That will come out later this year, and we just closed with a studio. I can't say the name yet, but a big studio will be distributing it, and it's fun. It's a ride.
And the trailer is out right now?
There's a teaser out right now, so you can. It's a 45-second or 1 minute teaser. It's
we'll put the link somewhere here.
Yeah, we'll put the link here. You guys can watch it. It's fun. It's really fun. And then I'm really excited. The next one I'm starting is another. It's kind of like an angel demon type movie, and it's called Jericho Falls, and it's great. Matt Pitts is he was J.J. Abrams' main writer. He did Westworld and he did Lost. Great.
I love Lost.
When you cast these movies, what's like the shooting time? You have to, is that in the budget? Like, okay, we got to shoot between March and August. Like, and this is what we have to fit in.
No, you know your shooting days. So you're like, okay, I have 24 days or I have 26 days. And then you schedule everything. I mean, first of all, your budget's about this big and your schedule's about this big. So every single line that's being said for the day by scene is broken down, right? And did you come on set? I forgot. You came on one day, right?
I didn't get to come. No,
okay.
Yet.
But yeah, so what happens then is you plan your schedule around your director and your cast, right? So, like, I don't know, let's say I'm going for Winona Ryder, for the lead in my next movie or one of the leads, she's going to have specific times that she's not shooting, and that has to align with your director, and that has to align with your producer, and then your
co-star. Everybody's on their own schedule, essentially. Like today at 12 o'clock, we're shooting with this girl and the director. She has to get through this many lines. Before 5 o'clock, she's off. We bring the next guy on.
Or, well, most of the scenes are multiple people, right? So you have these 6 people are on call with the whole crew, and then they shift out or they don't. You try and shoot people in blocks too. Right, to make it most cost effective. You don't shoot it in order. So you don't shoot movies chronologically, which is very strange. Like you could be shooting the ending first, and let's say that you have a really famous actress who's in the beginning for a little while, the middle, and the end. You're not going to keep them the whole time.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense. So like, for example, that movie, The Hangover, when Mike Tyson was in that movie, he was only in there at the beginning, the middle, the end. So he would show up, he'll probably shoot all of his scenes real quick.
In like a day. It was probably all shot in a day. Yeah.
And then they added the edit at the end. Okay, that makes so much sense.
Yeah. Editing is so important in movies because you literally are, a movie gets broken or created in the edit room.
Okay. And what's the name of your movie, just for the people out there?
Skill House.
Skill House.
And then if you lose the S,
Skill House minus the S.
Oh, okay. I love that.
Okay, we're at that. So if you guys want to check out Skill House by my good friend here, Ryan, go ahead and check it out. We're going to leave the link in the description below. Thank you guys so much again for tuning in to the number one podcast. More. Thank you for coming, Ryan. You're the man, bro.
Appreciate you guys a lot.
Thank you
so much. If you guys enjoyed these types of episodes, make sure you guys smash that like button, turn on post notifications, subscribe to all the channels. We love you guys the most. I'm your host, Chase DeMoor.
And Gabrielle Moses.